Hey, this is Christian. Let's get started with a brief overview of my proposed thesis project in its current iteration. TENTACULAR, the Agency of Speculative Fiction and Augmented Reality. This project will be a non-linear, interactive exploration of the agential capacity of media and the value of creative speculative works conveyed through a fictional narrative in augmented reality, with each path not a branch of the story, but a tentacle with the agency to reach out and take hold of the user. I'll be using a research creation methodology to consider how AR might be used to facilitate a non-linear speculative fiction narrative, exploring human perception, the nature of reality, and how media alters the way reality is perceived. The relationship between humans, consciousness, technology, and perception will also be examined, as well as whether media is imbued with the agential capacity to alter consciousness and the way in which reality is understood and experienced. It is difficult to communicate what actually constitutes reality in relation to the world and how it is perceived and understood. Technology such as augmented reality further complicates this relationship by introducing virtual elements into physical environments. Speculative fiction is a useful way to consider the implications of such technological and scientific developments, and to bring these conversations outside of academic spaces. Works of speculative fiction take on the agential capacity to provoke meaningful consideration of technological advancements and their effect on the world, how the world is understood, and by whom it is experienced. This project explores how speculative fiction may be implemented in augmented reality as an exploration of such discourse. My goal is to create a non-linear fictional narrative in augmented reality, exploring the agency of media and the potentialities of speculative works. My principal advisor, Ala Rushan, has provided some great resources for relevant theoretical frameworks and contemporary speculative artists. In a recent article, Sleep of Reason, an atlas of the philosophical imaginary, somewhat serendipitously, one of the definitions that Ala contributed was for the term cephalopod. As we descend into the darkness of the deep ocean, we also descend into an unknown region we know less about than our solar system. Stories abound of sea monsters lurking at the ends of the earth, on the blank spots on maps, and 20,000 leagues beneath our breath. Taking different forms, one creature perennially appears in philosophers' thought as an other, the cephalopod. Cephalopods share a shape-shifting potential that not only provides them with camouflage and sophisticated signaling in the wild, but also provides us with a malleable monster for our phobias and fantasies. Polyperverse cephalopods with their orgies, drag performances, and psychedelic dreaming have fascinated philosophers in the past, and will continue to tempt them as rising waters encroach our shores. This definition really encapsulates the mysterious and illusory nature of tentacular beings and why such an embodiment seems appropriate for the structure of my project. Augmented reality presents a rare opportunity to explore innovative forms of storytelling in a new medium. Speculation may be used as a tool to better understand and find truth in the unknowable through fictional imaginings represented through media. This project will continue from the foundation of my previous work in augmented reality, which dealt with similar existential themes. After some smaller explorations, my first substantial AR project was for my undergrad capstone. I developed a series of cards which acted as 2D image targets that anchored virtual elements to supplement and animate the printed content. This work was recently continued in the interactive documentary course last semester, for which I 3D printed a series of media objects which acted as 3D AR targets that played an assemblage of clips highlighting the book, the radio, the television, and the computer. For my thesis project, I plan to move away from image targets to create a more immersive AR experience that tracks the user's environment. I also plan to craft a fictional narrative to ground the experience and bring context to the ideas being explored. My research methods will include an extensive media and literature review exploring both theoretical concepts and fictional works which contribute to meaningful speculation of emerging technology. The work of Canadian scholar and media theorist Marshall McLuhan has been particularly influential on the understanding of media as extensions of the human, and media as not only conduits for content but messages in their own right. Connecting and extrapolating these ideas onto Benjamin Bratton's model of the stack, modern technology can be understood as interwoven layers of networks which humans are inextricably a part of. In this context, Bratton takes the idea to McLuhan's logical conclusion, wherein media is no longer an extension of the human, but the way in which human consciousness, or some form of it, may live on. In their book Life After New Media,
Sarah Kember and Joanna Zielinska connect the idea of media and technology as tools, and therefore extensions of experiential being, which become non-distinct from the user. Jane Bennett's notion of the vitality of matter describes the material agency or effectivity of non-human or not quite human things. Karen Barad uses the example of electricity to discuss the nature of matter and its agential capacities for imaginative, desiring, and effectively charged forms of bodily engagements.
Fritz Lang's Metropolis is one of the earliest and most influential science fiction films, depicting workers as literal cogs in the machine of the city, inspired by other pioneers of the genre such as Mary Shelley in her novel Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus, which speculated on the emerging scientific concept of galvanism as a framework to question the nature of life and what it means to be human. H.G. Wells was cited as another major influence for Lang, however the film did not resonate with the so-called father of science fiction. Wells did, however, have warmer reception for the infamous radio play adaptation of his novel War of the Worlds by Orson Welles, which notoriously convinced many unwitting listeners that an alien invasion was actually occurring. The phenomena of that event in particular, taking place at a specific point in time and influencing the perception of reality for such a large population, is a strong example of what Walter Benjamin would describe as aura, or the unique and authentic presence of a work of art. Another arguably culture-shifting speculative work is Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, made in collaboration with another sci-fi giant, Arthur C. Clarke, who co-wrote the screenplay with Kubrick. The depiction of the ship's artificial intelligence system, known as HAL, has since influenced countless representations of AI characters. Somewhat adjacent to the world of science fiction, but still within the broader realm of speculative fiction, is cosmic horror, most notably represented by the work of H.P. Lovecraft, whose work delves into the unknowable and the incomprehensible, what Immanuel Kant would describe as the grotesque and the sublime. Moving toward the end of the 20th century, many speculative works tend to fit somewhere between cosmic horror and sci-fi, with the likes of John Carpenter's The Thing and They Live, and most of the work from Canadian auteur David Cronenberg at that time. In particular, Videodrome and Existenz consider the influence that media such as television and games have on the human experience. Ridley Scott's Blade Runner questions what exactly makes human consciousness so distinct from the artificial intelligence of androids known as replicants. The film was inspired by Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Prominent speculative fiction author and self-proclaimed magician Alan Moore portrays this kind of agential capacity of storytelling in his graphic novel Promethea, which uses a fictional narrative to present his actual ideas on the literal magic of creative fiction. In their book Speculative Everything, Dune and Raby propose an imaginative approach that challenges what is possible and suggests value in open speculation through creation. The game The Stanley Parable utilizes a meta-narrative to explore themes of existential dread and the mundanity of reality. Sword of Damocles was the first augmented reality experience created in 1968. Ex Machina explores the humanization of artificial intelligence.
Quantum
Dead
speculates on consciousness
living on through interchangeable and altered. Blade Runner 2049 Westworld proposes that AI beings are entitled to rights. The goal of reviewing so many speculative fiction narratives is not to unpack each specific story element, but to better understand the ways in which their ideas are effectively communicated in each respective medium and apply that to augmented reality. The storytelling affordances of AR are yet to be fully realized, and it's exciting to see how narratives in this new form of media will manifest.
While I want to leave room to adapt the narrative and the content of the AR experience based on findings throughout the research creation process, I've been giving considerable thought to the fictional story element of the project. The structure of the narrative itself will take on a tentacular form, each appendage with its own agency to grab a hold of the user as they are entangled and devoured by the experience. After a brief introduction from the unnamed narrator, a series of paths would appear, each radiating from the user's perspective surrounding them. At the end of each extremity would be a sphere or totem of some kind that triggers one part of the narrative in any order the user chooses. Each of these sections would be a unique exploration of the ideas behind the story, culminating in a nefariously campy finale once the user has been fully engulfed by the narrative. I'm still working on the particulars of the story, but the main theme is the evolution of media technology in relation to the progress of humanity as a sort of symbiotic or even parasitic relationship. The best solution seems to be an assembled device along the lines of the technology stack implemented in a previous OCAD Digital Futures thesis project from Nick Alexander, comprised of a VR headset, a specialized external camera, and hand tracking technology. Nick used an HTC Vive for his project, but my Oculus Rift should also work based on the specs I could find. The Z Mini camera uses two lenses which are optimized for AR pass-through video, and the Leap Motion hand tracking sensor allows for intuitive interaction without handheld controllers. This single unit wearable solution would allow for an immersive and intuitive experience akin to what will likely be available in the near future. Another benefit of this technology is that it is compatible with development in Unity, which supports extremely robust interactions and animations. I've learned that even low-poly 3D objects with very simple animations can have an impressive effect when viewed in augmented space, so I'm excited to try different approaches and ultimately showcase a variety of experiments. The key element I hope to focus on during this initial prototyping phase is essentially the user interface. Ideally, I would like to get the hand tracking working to trigger interactions and have a basic structure for the tentacular framework. I imagine the paths starting out static and structured in a dormant state at the beginning, becoming more organic and fluid as the story progresses, and finally awakening to be fully alive, reaching out toward the user on its own toward the end.
There's still quite a few more tentacles I hope to develop and include, but I'm excited to use this time to prototype and get a feel for how this tentacular narrative will start to take shape. I'm looking forward to seeing how everyone's prototypes come together. Thanks for listening.